call the Honourable Shane Jones.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow in a collegial fashion the Shadow Spokesman for Agriculture and that little journey down memory lane about Motiti Island and the surrounding environs. Naturally, we support this bill. We support this bill because we think it's a reasonable impost that should be placed upon a global industry that from time to time will come to New Zealand of oil, or in my case, as fellow enthusiasts for the extraction of oil to the extent that we have accessible oil fields in New Zealand. Often, Mr Speaker, there is a debate as to where do you draw the line between what is rightfully the private responsibility of people who hope to profit from extracting resources out of our environment and that which remains the residual responsibility of the state. The reason I raise that distinction is to ensure that we do what is right and proper by our people, but we also don't close the door to those with access to foreign capital who either provide us with essential services, i.e. the continual access to the oil that we require, or who want to develop with New Zealanders the natural resources of our country. I also recall where I was when Nathan Guy, during that balmy summer, was checking his cows for bloat. I recall being... I recall he milks all the way around the year. He's got so many farms, although they may decrease if the four-lane highway continues along. Oh no, Mr Twyford is here. There'll be no more four-lane highways in that direction for the foreseeable future. maybe a token improved highway south of Whangarei. Of course, our attention is dedicated to rail, but that's all going to be electrical, so I'll come back to the topic in hand, sir. So I do recall where I was, but I also recall the utter confusion as to how did it happen, who was responsible, the quite lurid stories as to what would have possessed the Filipino captain, as I recall, to be celebrating a birthday, and who was actually with him when he celebrated that birthday. Of course, that led to all sorts of lurid explanations from the fishing industry that don't deserve to be shared in this particular segment of the evening or in the House. But I do recall also it being an absolute shock to the people from Motiti Island. They were engulfed in it. It was bigger than Ben-Hur, and sadly, it didn't end well for a lot of those people, partly because they felt dislocated in terms of what the state was doing, and partly they felt that the insurers standing behind, if I'm not mistaken, the Greek owners in that particular episode played hardball. But whilst the litigation and the politics got more and more robust, the environment suffered. I didn't have the pleasure, Mr Speaker, to actually go and visit the patient souls saving the seabirds, but I actually went out on a fishing boat and had a good look around in that particular area. So it's right and proper we sheet home the responsibilities where they belong, but do it in such a way that people realise that we're still open for business. That's not to compromise the standards that the public expect us to adhere to in relation to environmental management. It's just assuring people that come to New Zealand we're not some frontier where they can take advantage of us. We're a sophisticated, modern economy, and our people have very modern expectations as to who should be held responsible. Therefore, we support, and I echo some of the sentiments by Mr Guy and the speech shared initially by Mr Twyford. So we look forward to the entire process, and we identify the need to have balance, but also to compromise not 1 inch should we continue to suffer the sad lessons of RINA and our environment suffers. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I might call Sarah Dowling.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker.